Jesse Lasky, who was a big executive at Paramount, he bought this book from H.G. Wells in 1924, and it sat at Paramount until 1951.
H.G. Wells' son, Frank, was interested in doing the movie, doing the book. And he said, sorry, son, but it's been sold. I don't own it anymore. And then there was a German director, a Russian director, even Hitchcock was interested. I believe that H.G. Wells said, I'm sorry, I think you've waited too long. I not only do not own it, but you've waited too long. You cannot do a period picture now. It wouldn't be of any interest, and there's no way to bring it up to date. Well, comes 1938. Who brings it up to date but Orson Welles?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Wait a minute. Someone's calling someone or something. Ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it. It's so awful. The eyes are black and they gleam like a serpent. The mouth is kind of V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate, and the monster or whatever it is can hardly move. It's most extraordinary experience, ladies and gentlemen. I can't find words. Well, I'll pull this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
I was probably maybe 4 years old, but I knew what stuff was going on. I could kind of tell what was happening. I listened to it with my grandfather. My folks were out that night because around Halloween or something. And I remember it terrified me because my grandfather got scared. He was believing it, as a lot of people did, you know. And I remember feeling that fear. Oh, my God, if my grandfather's afraid and he's the hero guy here, you know, he's the grown-up, what's going to happen to me, you know? And I think I had dreams about that for a while. And a lot of people didn't stick with it at the end. That's why it caused such a panic. A lot of people were already out of their cars or going somewhere, doing something, getting out of the place. Because at the end, you know, Wells does this whole monologue.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying, boo, it's Halloween.
Ray Harryhausen wanted to do War of the Worlds, but Cecil B. DeMille said, I'm sorry, I own it and I'm giving it to George Pal. He was very disappointed, but he said, George is my very good friend, and if anyone can pull this off, it'll be George Pal.
I actually built a Martian based on H.G. Wells' description in War of the Worlds. I wanted to keep it in the Victorian period, which the original story was laid. He described the creature that came from the spaceship as sort of an octopus-like type of creature. I took it all around Hollywood. Jesse Lasky had it for a while, and George Pal had it for a while. I understood that Paramount owned the rights to all Wells' subjects. So I thought Jesse Lasky could really get in because he practically founded Paramount Pictures. But he had it for 6 months, but we couldn't raise money. People weren't that interested in science fiction at that time.
I think George Pal caught on to something in the early 50s Hollywood. He knew that rocketry was a happening thing. There was talk about UFOs. It was the atomic age. And he had always had an interest in fantasy, and fairies and gnomes and creatures in the woods could now be transposed into a new genre. He made good films about these popular subjects. And for a while there, he was kind of what George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are and James Cameron are to this more later generations.
George Pal went to the head of Paramount Studio, Don Hartman, and presented him with the script that Barry Lyndon had written for him. Don Hartman, not caring a hoot about science fiction, said, oh, this is where this belongs, and threw it in the wastepaper basket. Well, poor Mr. Pal, I mean, he came unglued. He absolutely lost his mind. He leaped across the desk and he grabbed him by the lapels. He was going to strangle the man. Frank Freeman Sr., who was president of Paramount Studio, he came in and stopped them. He said, never seen Mr. Powell react like that. So when he came in and said, don't worry about a thing, George, the movie is yours. Whatever budget you need, whatever you need, you just come to me.
We shall be the first men on Earth to get a real look at these invaders from space.
Nozaki was probably one of the finest art directors around. I mean, he was really a visionary guy, and he's the one that came up with the saucers, sort of the manta ray look, and then that sort of cobra head thing, because they wanted to see about doing the tripod machines. George wanted to do that originally, and do it in these puppetoon style, and Paramount said, no, it's too much money. We can't do it. You've got to come up with something else.
This could cost 10 times as much. Imagine destruction all over the world. No could have done things like that.
And so Al came up with this, I think, brilliant designs. I mean, those saucers are beautiful. And being a manta ray, they're kind of scary right away. Cobra heads, cobras are scary. So it had all the elements, only it was a mechanical thing. Now, what you're seeing here is the close-up of the Cobra eye of the Martian war machine. Now, this particular machine was not in the original film. They had 3 of them in the original film. They were made of copper and had all kinds of electronics in here, and the green things glowed, all the windows and stuff glowed. And this was made for the TV series that they did a few years ago. And so this is just made of fiberglass. And a sad story about the original ones that were made of copper, they gave them to a copper drive, a Boy Scout copper drive, and they were melted down, and so they don't exist.
I did get to go on stage 18 and watch them glide. It was silent. And these magnificent copper machines were just gliding above you, all across the soundstage. It was quite eerie and very, very impressive.
There were like 20 wires hanging from these things, some of them to make the electronics work in there, because in the saucers themselves, they had electronics where the things would glow green, the Cobra head that would actually pulsate, and they were made out of copper and had all the mechanism, and they were fairly heavy.
See, the wires were painted blue so that it would not show up on the screen, but some people have maintained they could see the wires pretty well.
When they fired the ray, they took like an acetylene torch against black and with a fan, and they would match it up to where the ship was supposed to be or the Cobra head was supposed to be, and they would hit the acetylene with a fan and blow it out, and that's what you saw when that ray came out, which is really kind of brilliant. You think about it.
I remember coming on the set and looking up at this enormous Cobra head. And I said, what in God's name is that? And somebody flipped a switch, and that thing came on. Scared the devil out of me. I jumped a mile.
There's a scene later where they make these blisters, and they're like domes. And what they literally did there, they just took glass domes and shot them against black and supered them right over the saucers. Because to make a dome big enough for a saucer that's, 3.5 feet across, that would have been a pretty darn big.